In 1918, the German government sent an official diplomatic protest to the United States. They demanded that America stop using a specific weapon. They called it a violation of the laws of war. They threatened to execute any American prisoner caught carrying one, or even possessing its ammunition. The weapon in question was not a new type of poison gas. It was not an artillery shell. It was not some secret experimental device. It was a shotgun, a pump-action shotgun originally, designed for hunting ducks and small game, the same country that introduced chlorine gas to the battlefield in 1915, the same army that deployed flamethrowers to incinerate men in their trenches, the same military that issued saw-backed bayonets intended to inflict ragged, difficult-to-treat wounds. That country filed a formal complaint about a civilian sporting weapon, and they were serious, dead serious. The story of the Winchester Model 1897 is one of the strangest in military history, how an ordinary pump-action hunting gun became so terrifying in close-quarters combat that an empire tried and failed to have it banned. The Winchester Model 1897 was designed by the legendary John Moses Browning, the same genius who later created the M1911 pistol, the Browning automatic rifle, and many other iconic firearms. He built it primarily for civilian hunters, for shooting birds, ducks, and small game on farms and in fields, not for war. It held 6 12-gauge shells in its tubular magazine. A typical military load used .00 buckshot, 9.33 caliber lead pellets per shell, roughly the diameter of a 9mm bullet. One trigger pull sent 9 projectiles downrange at once, but that was just the beginning. The Model 1897 had no trigger disconnector. Unlike most modern shotguns that require releasing the trigger to reset for the next shot, this one allowed slam fire. If you held the trigger down and worked the pump action, the gun fired instantly with each pump. A skilled user could empty all 6 rounds in roughly 2 to 3 seconds, unleashing 54 pellets in a devastating hail almost instantaneously. Soldiers often fired from the hip, letting the recoil help cycle the action in a rhythmic blur. The gun weighed about 8 pounds, around 3.6 kg, with an effective range of 20 to 30 meters in combat conditions. In open fields, that was a limitation. In the narrow, twisting trenches of the Western Front, often just 4 feet wide with high walls on both sides, it was devastatingly perfect. The Germans gave it chilling nicknames, trench sweeper and trench broom, terms that perfectly captured what it did to men packed in confined spaces. If you're finding this story interesting, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. A like really helps channels tell more stories like this. It takes 2 seconds. Now, back to the history. The Model 1897 had been around since 1897, 2 decades before America entered World War I in April 1917. It was sold in gun shops and used on farms across the US for hunting birds and small game. So how did a civilian duck gun end up in the trenches of France? The decision traced back to a general who had seen shotguns' effectiveness in close combat years earlier. General John J. Pershing, nicknamed Black Jack, from commanding African-American cavalry units in the American West, was the U.S. Army's most experienced combat leader by 1917. He remembered the Philippine-American War around 1900, where U.S. forces fought Moro warriors in the southern islands. Some Moros used juramentado, a ritual suicide attack, binding limbs to slow bleeding, praying and charging with blades. Standard rifles often failed to stop them quickly. Wounded attackers kept coming. Officers turned to shotguns loaded with buckshot. At close range, a single blast delivered massive stopping power that rifle bullets sometimes lacked. Pershing noted it. He saw similar value again in 1916 during the punitive expedition into Mexico chasing Pancho Villa. The campaign involved fast, close-quarters ambushes in rough terrain. Shotguns proved effective once more for sudden, violent encounters. When America declared war on Germany in April 1917, Pershing took command of the American Expeditionary Forces, AEF. He knew trench warfare awaited, narrow passages, hand-to-hand fighting, night raids, exactly the scenarios where shotguns had excelled before. Pershing wanted them. But commercial hunting shotguns needed military adaptations. In September 1917, engineer William G. Eager proposed modifications: a ventilated metal heat shield handguard to protect hands from a hot barrel, a bayonet lug for close combat when ammo ran out, and a shortened barrel for maneuverability in tight spaces. The Army approved. Contracts went to Winchester and Remington. The modified Model 1897 became the famous trench gun. By mid-1918, the AEF allocated about 50 shotguns per division, not to arm entire units, but to equip selected soldiers, men with hunting experience, who knew how to lead targets and pump fire instinctively. They became specialized shotgunners sent into the trenches. The Germans, after 4 years of war against British, French and others, had faced machine guns, artillery, tanks and gas. They had never encountered anything quite like this. A Western Front trench was a muddy maze, narrow corridors, often 3 to 4 feet wide, sharp corners, blind turns, dugouts. Going over the top meant crossing open ground under fire, but once inside enemy trenches, combat became intimate. Rifles were clumsy for accuracy at point-blank range. Speed and volume mattered more. The Winchester excelled here. Its 20-30 meter range covered a trench section several corners away. The buckshot spread, nearly a meter wide at 20 meters, made missing nearly impossible in a confined passage. A bolt-action rifle might deliver 15 aimed rounds per minute. A slam-firing shotgunner could put 54 pellets into a trench in seconds. Contemporary accounts describe German assaults halted by shotgun fire, front ranks collapsing in heaps as buckshot tore through multiple men. The psychological impact was immense. Germans called U.S. Marines Teufelhunden, devil dogs, a term possibly originating around Belleau Wood in June 1918, where Marines fought ferociously in dense woods. Shotgunners developed tactics from pre-war skills. Some were competitive trap shooters used to tracking fast clay pigeons. They reportedly blasted German stick grenades out of the air mid-flight, sending them back toward the enemy. The trench gun earned its names: sweeper, broom, a tool for clearing spaces. German command noticed early. Concerns about shotguns dated back to before America's entry. Reports from the Philippines and Mexico had reached them. As early as 1914 to 1915, informal complaints surfaced, but they gained no traction while America was neutral. By summer 1918, with Americans fully engaged and shotguns in use, fear turned to desperation. At Belleau Wood, June 1918, Marines with trench guns helped turn the tide in brutal close combat. By September 1918, during the 100 Days Offensive, German lines were crumbling. American troops poured in. Then came the protest. On September 19, 1918, some sources note the note verbal dated around September 15th, Germany sent a formal diplomatic cable via neutral Switzerland and initially Spain to the U.S. State Department. It invoked Article 23E of the 1907 Hague Convention, prohibiting weapons calculated to cause unnecessary suffering. They argued shotgun wounds, multiple projectiles causing widespread, hard-to-treat damage, qualified. The key passage: the German government protests against the use of shotguns by the American Army and calls attention to the fact that according to the law of war, Kriegsrecht, every prisoner found to have in his possession such guns or ammunition belonging thereto forfeits his life. They set a deadline, reply by October 1st, 1918, or executions would begin. The threat was unprecedented. No other weapon, gas, flamethrowers, etc., prompted such a warning. Secretary of State Robert Lansing received it. He consulted military lawyers. Acting Judge Advocate General Brigg. General Samuel T. Ansel prepared the response. Memorandum dated September 26, 1918. Ansel argued the protest lacked legal merit. Unnecessary suffering required comparison. All weapons cause. Suffering, shrapnel, machine guns and artillery created comparable or worse multi-projectile effects. Shotguns had historical precedent in warfare. Lansing's official reply, delivered before the deadline. The U.S. rejected the claim outright. The Hague provision did not forbid such weapons. In view of the shotgun's history, its current use and comparison to other approved arms, it was not subject to legitimate or reasonable protest. Then the counter-threat. If Germany executed even one American for possessing a shotgun or shells, the U.S. would make reprisals to protect its forces, and notice was hereby given of that intention. Germany backed down. No executions occurred. Just 44 days later, November 11, 1918, the armistice ended the war. The Winchester Model 1897 didn't fade away. It returned in World War II. Pacific jungles, Guadalcanal, Iwo Jima, Okinawa, caves, bunkers, dense vegetation. Marines acquired them from Navy ships. Some generals carried them. It saw use in Korea, Vietnam and beyond, nearly a century of service. Over 1 million Model 1897s were made, 1897, 1957. The military bought hundreds of thousands of shotguns overall. The German protest became a grim historical irony. The inventors of modern chemical warfare complaining that a duck-hunting shotgun was too cruel. In 4 years of mechanized slaughter, tanks, planes, submarines, gas, the weapon that terrified them most was a pump-action sporting gun firing 54 pellets in seconds. John Browning designed it for birds. He never imagined it would prompt the war's only formal execution threat against a single weapon type, the trench sweeper, the trench broom, just a shotgun. If this story was worth your time, hit that like button. It helps the algorithm show it to more history fans. Subscribe and turn on notifications for the next one. Drop a comment. Where are you watching from? And what other primitive or unexpected weapons should we cover next? Longbows in medieval battles, bayonets, trench knives. These stories deserve to be remembered. Thanks for watching.